Breaking news this Saturday night. The U.S. president announces a tariff increase for Canada. Donald Trump doubles down, announcing plans to add an extra 10% on imports from Canada.
Canada lied. I mean, what they did was terrible.
As the president and the prime minister arrive in Asia for a high-stakes summit.
1 down, 3 to go!
Also tonight, Blue Jays jubilation. The crushing Game 1 win sends Toronto into a tizzy. Can the boys in blue make it 2? We'll have a report from Rogers Centre. Donation consternation. The billionaire paying U.S. soldiers' salaries during the government's shutdown. Plus, Halloween sticker shock. Why you can expect to pay more for trick or treat.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Jeff Semple.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. We begin tonight with breaking news. U.S. President Donald Trump is once again raising tariffs on Canada, this time in response to Ontario's anti-tariff TV ad campaign that's airing in the U.S. this weekend, but is set to be pulled from the airwaves on Monday. That ad includes a clip from former President Ronald Reagan. In a long social media post railing against Canada, Trump says, because of their serious misrepresentation of the facts and hostile act, I am increasing the tariff on Canada by 10% over and above what they are paying now. At this point, it's unclear exactly how that extra 10% will be applied and whether it will be added on top of the sectoral tariffs, for example, or on all goods not covered by the current free trade deal. The president is on his way to Asia tonight, where Prime Minister Mark Carney is also set to conduct trade talks with multiple countries. Mackenzie Gray is traveling with the Prime Minister. Mackenzie.
Donald Trump is clearly jet-lagged, Jeff, because he was on social media at 4:30 a.m. here local time, blasting Canada, promising a new 10% tariff, in his words, over and above what they are paying now. If that's a new baseline tariff or just an additional 10% on what Canada is paying on things like steel and aluminum, that's not clear right now. The Prime Minister's office has always been very cautious to comment on these kinds of posts from Trump without seeing anything on paper, and they've got no comment this morning here in Malaysia on what Trump has said, despite many sources that I've talked with saying they didn't sleep at all last night thanks to Trump. This comes after Trump called off trade talks with Canada on Thursday because he's upset about an ad from the Ontario government that had clips from a 1987 speech from Ronald Reagan, where he dumped on tariffs. Trump said it was fake, a fraud, and that Reagan loved tariffs in certain circumstances, and none of that's true, Jeff. The speech is real, and while Reagan did discuss putting very limited tariffs on Japan during that address, he talked at length about how much he hated tariffs, which was a central theme of his entire political career. Also in that speech, he praises Canada on free trade, which led to the signing of the Canada-US free trade deal with Brian Mulroney later that year. While Doug Ford has said he was going to pull that out on Monday, it still aired on U.S. TV last night during the Blue Jays' victory, and the game was most certainly on Air Force One while Trump was flying to Malaysia. Trump is going to be here at the ASEAN Summit of Southeastern Asian countries, so there could be a chance that he could bump into the Prime Minister, but both Trump and Canadian officials have said there are no formal plans for them to meet, and I checked in again this morning with the Prime Minister's office, Jeff, and Carney and Trump have not talked since Trump called off trade talks on Thursday.
All right, Mackenzie Gray tracking that breaking news in Kuala Lumpur. Thanks, Mac.
Coming to win the World Series, baby. Let's go, Blue Jays. 5, baby. Jays in 5.
An outpouring of excitement on the streets of Toronto overnight after the Blue Jays delivered a dominant victory in Game 1 of the World Series. And that celebration stretched far beyond the greater Toronto area.
I can't believe my boys are doing so crazy. This is insane. They're doing it for the country. They're doing it for all of us. Love them.
Watch parties were held across Canada, including this packed bar in Vancouver, and even across the ocean in London, England, where diehard fans tuned in the middle of the night. Jays Nation cheering on Canada's team across the country and around the world. And Jays fans are hoping to have another reason to celebrate tonight as they face the LA Dodgers in Game 2. Our Eric Sorensen joins us again from outside a rocking Rogers Centre. Eric.
Well, Jeff, so much for being intimidated by the Los Angeles Dodgers, the heavy favorite in the World Series. The Blue Jays have momentum going into tonight's Game 2 after getting off to a great start in Game 1 last night.
The first roar of the crowd came during the national anthem, a surge of Canadian pride as America's pastime showcased the World Series north of the border for the first time in 3 decades. The roars returned when the Blue Jays staged another improbable comeback. Dalton Varsho's home run turned the tide in a game the Blue Jays were losing, but it was an outburst soon after. The first grand slam by a pinch hitter in World Series history, and the Jays were on their way.
Dodgers haven't seen a team like this in the playoffs yet either, so.
I think the Jays have surprised the Dodgers. They weren't expecting that.
A lot has gone right for the Blue Jays to be 3 wins from a World Series title. Pitching, hitting, and an often much maligned part of the team, the work of the front office.
Before the season began, the Blue Jays were recruiting and developing young talent. General Manager Ross Atkins and President Mark Shapiro, along with manager John Schneider, were putting the pieces in place. They brought in future Hall of Famer Max Scherzer, then signed Vladimir Guerrero Jr. long-term, and made more deals during the season.
They were working on this all winter, making decisions and how do we get better and what do we need to take another step. At the end of the day, players win games. But Snipes and the front office did a great job of getting us here.
All of it following years often marked by falling short of expectations.
We have had some crash landings that have been very difficult for us all, the fans, us and the organizations to stomach. But I'm exceptionally happy for our players and our staff to be sitting where we are today.
Fans giving some credit now.
Clement, Barger, Schneider, like some of the depth guys that they brought in, they're all contributing just as much as the big name guys. So the front office definitely deserves a lot of credit now.
All of the disappointments of recent years will vanish, of course, if the Blue Jays go on to win the World Series, and they can take a big step towards that goal if they can win Game 2 tonight here in Toronto. Jeff?
Well, as mentioned earlier, world leaders are gathering in Asia this weekend, and U.S. President Donald Trump told reporters he's hoping China can help push for peace in Ukraine. He's looking for President Xi to use his influence to bring Russia to the table. Donald Trump's comments come after another deadly night in the Ukrainian capital. Russian missile and drone attacks killed 4 people and wounded 20, most in the Kyiv and Dnipro region. President Volodymyr Zelensky says the attack underscores Ukraine's need for better defenses. Zelensky is urging the U.S. to provide more of its Patriot missile defense systems. Former Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris says she's considering running again.
When are they going to see a woman in charge in the White House?
In their lifetime, for sure.
Could it be you? Possibly. Have you made a decision yet?
No, I have not.
In that BBC interview, Harris called Trump a tyrant, and she dismissed opinion polls that suggest she'd be a long shot to become the Democrats' pick for the 2028 election. And whoever runs for the Democrats in that next presidential election, Steve Bannon says he believes they could face Donald Trump. In an interview with The Economist, the former Trump strategist and convicted fraudster claimed he's part of a team that's working on a plan to allow Trump to run for a 3rd term in the Oval Office. Now, Bannon wouldn't explain how Trump intends to circumvent the U.S. Constitution, which limits presidents to 2 terms. As the U.S. government shutdown drags on, the White House is accepting a private donation from a billionaire to help pay members of the military. The unprecedented move is raising questions and some red flags. As Candace Cole reports, it's just the latest example of the Trump administration using private donations to carry out its agenda.
He's obviously a very substantial man, and he contributed $130 million toward the military in order to make up any difference. He'd prefer, I think, that his name not be mentioned. Which is
Saturday, President Donald Trump praising the man the New York Times has identified as Timothy Mellon, a banking heir and grandson of former Treasury Secretary Andrew Mellon, for making a massive donation to the Pentagon.
To take money from a private enterprise person, anyone private, to pay our military, I think is counter to the intent of the framers, of the U.S. Constitution.
The multi-million-dollar donation comes just days after the Senate failed to pass a measure to reappropriate funding to pay service members and essential workers, and raises key questions about the impact to the armed services.
I'm very concerned that we are creating a mercenary type situation in which we have a private army that is not just responsible to the generals who are over them, but now could feel some loyalty to a private citizen.
Private donations have also been accepted for the construction of Trump's massive new ballroom at the White House, set to cost $300 million, paid for by a laundry list of donors, including companies like Amazon, NextEra Energy, and Lockheed Martin, to name a few. All while the government shutdown nears its fourth week, reaching a critical point for many federal workers who are going without any pay for the first time since being furloughed, adding further strain on community resources like food pantries that have been cut off from federal funding. Budget experts say Mellon's donation would only amount to about $100 per service member, but may run afoul of the Anti-Deficiency Act, which prohibits the government from spending money in addition to what's been approved by Congress. Candace Cole, Global News, Washington.
Se están inventando una nueva guerra eterna.
Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro is accusing the U.S. of fabricating a war after the Americans deployed the world's largest warship to the Caribbean. In a televised address, Maduro said Venezuela is free of cocaine production, and he promised to eliminate the drug transit that comes from Colombia. U.S. forces have recently launched 10 airstrikes targeting ships in that area, allegedly for drug trafficking. Alberta teachers strike showdown coming up. The union's fiery response over the Premier's plans to force educators back to school. Unions across Alberta are promising an unprecedented response if Premier Daniel Smith invokes the notwithstanding clause to force teachers back to work. A joint letter to Smith signed by 30 unions says invoking the clause would escalate the situation from a confrontation between your government and the teachers to a confrontation between you and the entire Canadian labour movement. The strike, involving more than 50,000 teachers and affecting more than 700,000 students, is heading into its fourth week. Smith says her government will introduce back-to-work legislation on Monday if the two sides can't reach a deal. And a protest was held today outside a hospital in Kamloops, BC, where an entire team of obstetricians and gynecologists resigned earlier this month. Their departure has put maternity care in the city at risk. And as Neethu Garcha reports, it's highlighting a much wider issue across Canada's healthcare system.
A maternity care crisis in Kamloops, British Columbia, where all 7 obstetricians and gynecologists at the city's hospital have resigned.
Kamloops is a city of about 100,000 people, but we are a regional hub, and our hospital serves over 200,000 people in the region.
The OBGYN cited long-standing workload and resource concerns, issues they said had been raised with the Interior Health Authority over several years.
It's a really scary time. There's folks that will go without maternity care, people seeking maternity care in the emergency department, women not knowing where they're going to deliver.
BC's health minister says the health authority continues to work with the physicians during a 90-day transition period and that maternity care remains available.
They are at the same time talking with other physicians who may wish to come and work in Kamloops.
It's putting a national spotlight on physician burnout and what some advocates call moral distress across the country.
The lack of support, the inability to get the care the patients need. This is occurring across Canada. But I think Kamloops is the first to kind of sit up and say, we can't do this anymore.
The Canadian Medical Association's 2025 National Physician Health Survey found 46% of doctors reported burnout. The CMA's president says there are many drivers, including staffing shortages, increased complexity of care, and the growing need to discuss misinformation with patients.
Our physicians, they're still spending over a day's worth of work outside of the regular working hours doing administrative work that would better be tasked to other healthcare providers that may know the patient and provide better details.
There's challenges in every part of the healthcare system, of course, but this is an issue that disproportionately impacts women. Those are issues that go unresearched, underfunded.
National maternity care experts say because health care is administered provincially, there's no national data tracking the full impact, making a coordinated approach crucial to support maternity care and the physicians who provide it. Neetu Garcha, Global News, Vancouver.
The head of the Manitoba Inuit Association has suddenly been replaced as the nonprofit faces allegations of abuse and harassment. On Friday, the association issued a short statement saying a new interim CEO is now in place and that there would be no further comment. The nonprofit has faced allegations of a toxic workplace that have prompted multiple investigations. 6 of its 8 board members have also resigned in the past year. It's one of several organizations also facing pressure from the recent Inuit Me Too movement, targeting alleged abuse from male Inuit leaders, which also called for the CEO's removal. Still ahead, seatbelt safety. A Nova Scotia teen shares her cautionary tale. A Nova Scotia teen is sharing her traumatic experience, hoping her story can help save lives. The 17-year-old suffered major injuries, including a severe stroke in a car crash 2 years ago. She wasn't wearing a seatbelt, and as Heidi Petracek reports, she's now using her voice to encourage others to buckle up.
I think we've got a few schools joining us today on the live stream.
At Nova Scotia's RCMP headquarters, this 17-year-old has a message for fellow teens.
If I just wear my seatbelt, would it have been easier? Would I have not had the stroke?
2 years ago, Corinne Cameron's car trip with friends almost killed her.
And we were in the car for probably maybe 3 minutes. And the driver was going way too fast.
Then the crash happened.
I think I went flying through the window and tumbled in someone's driveway.
I really didn't believe that she was ejected until I went to the hospital and saw her, and she was completely covered in mud.
She had a broken neck, clavicle, and pelvis, and a torn liver. Then doctors discovered she'd also had a massive stroke. It damaged the left side of her brain, leaving her unable to speak, read, or write. She spent 3 months in hospital, then worked hard on recovery.
I think people don't really think of seatbelts, and how terrible and awful it can really be with not wearing it.
Seatbelts have been law in Canada since the late 1970s. Even so, in 2023, Transport Canada reported a 12% increase in drivers killed in crashes who weren't wearing them.
It was a severe crash, high in the severity level.
Sergeant John White responded to Cameron's crash and says it's a miracle everyone survived, although injuries were severe. He wants all drivers and passengers, no matter what age, to take seatbelts seriously.
They do save lives. They protect you and people around you.
I really didn't want to lose my dreams.
Cameron still sometimes searches for words, but is determined to share her story. And she's also pursuing a fashion career, walking a runway in Paris Fashion Week earlier this month, defying the odds. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Dartmouth, Nova Scotia.
Thousands in Jamaica are preparing for Hurricane Melissa, a slow-moving but rapidly intensifying storm that's now churning southeast of the island. The Category 1 hurricane is expected to explode into a Category 4 and possibly stronger before hitting Jamaica early next week. Melissa's slow pace could also bring days of torrential rain, flooding, and landslides across the Caribbean. 4 people have already died in Haiti and the Dominican Republic. Up next, scary prices. Why this year's Halloween haul might cost you more. Welcome back. Halloween is now less than 1 week away, and if you haven't bought your candy yet, you might be in for a scary surprise. As Megan Cobb reports, the cost of filling those treat bags is going up.
This is the part that you'll be roasting, and you'll be using it to turn it into chocolate.
Baking and pastry arts have been his passion for more than 25 years. But it's only within the last decade that Kevin Kniff truly discovered the rich joy of chocolate.
You can eat your mistakes, you can create different things. It's got a great medium, it can absorb different flavors, and it's really versatile.
Calgary-based Sweet Bella Chocolate's business has been steadily growing for 7.5 years. And while that journey has been mostly sweet, lately there's been a touch of bitterness.
And shipping costs have gone up, packaging have gone up, so everything is going up. So for high quality product that we use at Sweet Bella, the prices have gone up significantly in the last year and a half.
Kniff says his costs have risen about 15 to 20%, a charge he tries not to pass on to customers, but there's only so many variables he can control. In addition to the shipping and packaging costs, the way the cocoa bean is grown is changing, with farmers along the equator having to adapt, meaning fewer people are growing the key ingredient. Those rising costs have far-reaching impacts, especially as goblins and ghouls get ready to hit the streets. A new Dalhousie Agri-Food Analytics Lab report estimates Canadian households will be spending 10 to 20% more this year on Halloween candy, partly because it's taking more to end up with the same amount of candy at the end of the night.
If you typically would give 2 or 3 pieces of chocolate, for example, which is the most popular item for Halloween, people actually are inclined to give 4 or 5 per trick-or-treater.
And shrinkflation isn't just making the size of the treat smaller.
Before you saw 100 pieces, now you're seeing 90, 85 or something like that. So there's less weight sold.
With Halloween just the kickoff to the chocolate holiday season, one piece of advice from those who know best: to make your dollar go further, focus on quality over quantity.
So you don't have to use so much of the good stuff. Just like a really good vanilla. You don't have to use much. A little bit goes a long way.
Megan Cobb, Global News.
And that is Global National for this Saturday night. I'm Jeff Semple. Tonight's Your Canada showcases Carbonear, Newfoundland and Labrador, Race Rocks Ecological Reserve in BC, and Joe Haven, Nunavut. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you back here again tomorrow. Have a great night.